When I first saw the wolf standing by the grave, my heart froze because I realized this wasn't an accident. It was a gray morning, the kind that presses on your chest and makes the world feel smaller, heavier. The dirt road to the cemetery was muddy from last night's rain, and the trees were black skeletons against a pale sky. I walked behind the others, head down, clutching my coat tighter as if it could keep out the weight of grief. The air smelled like wet earth and sorrow. No one spoke loudly, just murmurs, broken whispers, the sound of boots sinking into soft ground. A crow called somewhere far away, sharp and lonely. It felt like the whole forest was watching us. We were there to bury a man everyone in the village knew. He wasn't family to me, not by blood, but I respected him. He was one of those people who understood the land, who lived with it, not against it. They said he died quietly in his sleep. Maybe that's true. But the look on people's faces told me this death was heavier than most. I was lost in that thought when I saw it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Through the crooked line of birch trees, beyond the last row of wooden crosses, something stood still, like a shadow too solid for morning mist. Then it moved, just enough for the shape to come alive. A wolf, not a dog, not a stray, a wolf. Tall, gray, with fur that seemed to drink in the weak sunlight. It stood at the very edge of the cemetery, where the wild grass met the old wooden fence. Its head was high, ears pricked forward, eyes locked on us. No growling, no snarling, just watching. I stopped walking. My throat went dry. Wolves don't come this close. Not here, not in daylight. I glanced at the others, expecting someone to shout, to grab a stick, to do something, but no one had noticed yet. Or maybe they saw and pretended not to. The last thing anyone wanted was panic at a funeral. For a moment, I told myself it was hungry. Maybe it smelled food, or maybe the scent of death pulled it in. Animals do that, don't they? I thought any second now it would turn and vanish into the trees, just a wild thing passing through. But it didn't move. The priest began his prayer, voice low and trembling. People crossed themselves, their lips moving with the old words. I couldn't take my eyes off the wolf. It didn't blink, didn't flinch. Its tail hung low, not tense like an animal ready to strike, more like submission, respect. I tried to shake the thought. It's just a wolf, just an animal. But then something happened that made the hair on my arms rise like static. The wolf lowered its head, slowly, deliberately, not in fear, not like prey, like reverence. It held that bow for a moment, still as stone. My breath caught in my throat. My chest felt tight. It wasn't just looking. It was grieving. I know how crazy that sounds. Believe me, I didn't want to believe it either. My mind fought it, searched for any other explanation. Maybe it smelled something in the grass. Maybe its neck was tired. But no, there was something in the way it moved, in the silence that wrapped around us when it did. And then, as if the forest itself wanted to prove me wrong, the wind died. The trees stopped whispering. Even the crow that had been crying all morning fell silent. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, thudding in my ears. For a moment, I forgot where I was, forgot the people around me. It was just me and that wolf across the field, two creatures staring at each other over a fresh grave. And in its eyes, God help me, there was no hunger there, no rage, just something deep and still and impossibly human. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember moving. All I remember is thinking, this can't be real. And yet it was. The priest's voice broke the spell for a second, calling us back to the words of the living. I glanced around. Some others had noticed now. A murmur spread, soft as grass in the wind. Heads turned, fingers pointed. No one spoke loud. It was as if we were all afraid to break whatever this was. I thought, this is it. Someone will shout. Someone will scare it away. But no one did. The wolf stayed, head lowered, body still, as if it understood every word of the prayer, as if it came here with a purpose. And in that moment, deep in my bones, I felt something I can't explain, something bigger than fear, bigger than grief. It wasn't guarding itself, it was guarding him. I wasn't the only one staring anymore. The whispers started soft, like wind rustling dry leaves. First 2 voices, then 5, then the whole line of mourners buzzing with words no one wanted to say too loud. Wolves never do this. It's a bad sign. And then someone murmured something that made my blood run cold. They say wolves don't forget kindness. The phrase hit me like a blow. For a second, I didn't understand. Then my mind dragged out an old story, one I'd almost forgotten. The man we were burying, he was no ordinary villager. He had a past that people spoke about only in winter, by firesides, when the night was long. Years ago, they said, he found a wolf caught in a steel trap. Not just a pup, a full-grown beast, wounded and half mad with pain. Most hunters would have shot it, quick and clean, but not him. He freed it. I remember him laughing about it once, shrugging like it was nothing. What kind of man leaves a creature to die screaming in the snow, he said. But his eyes told me it was more than that. And now there was a wolf standing at his grave. I tried to breathe, tried to tell myself it was coincidence, a trick of fate, an animal drawn by smell. But then the wolf moved, not away, not back into the safety of the forest. Closer, one slow step, then another. Mud squelched under its paws, dark against the frost-laced ground. My stomach knotted so hard I thought I might be sick. The people around me stiffened, their murmurs snapping into sharp breaths. I felt every instinct screaming, run, climb, hide. But my legs stayed frozen, as if the earth had swallowed them whole. The wolf stopped maybe 20 feet away. Its body was lean, scarred in places, muscles sliding under thick gray fur like coiled rope. Its breath steamed in the cold, ghostly against the stillness of the cemetery. And then, its eyes found mine. God help me, I couldn't look away. Golden, bright as fire yet deeper than night. There was no wild frenzy there, no hunger, just something I couldn't name, something that reached straight past my skin, my ribs, into the softest part of me, and clenched. Fear shot through me first, sharp as a blade, but then something shifted. A calm I didn't trust settled over me, heavy and strange, like a blanket thrown across raw nerves. My hands stopped trembling, my throat loosened, and then the chills hit, not from cold, from knowing. It sees me, it knows I see it. The priest's voice wavered, his words faltered like a candle flame before a gust, and that's when it happened. Someone broke. "Hey, get out!" a man roared, his voice cracking like a rifle shot. I flinched so hard it hurt. The sound ripped through the spell, jagged and wrong against the soft hum of morning. The wolf didn't flinch. It didn't even blink. The man shouted again, louder this time, lifting his arms like a scarecrow, his boots crunching forward. The old women gasped, clutching their scarves, crossing themselves so fast their fingers blurred. My heart slammed into my ribs. This is it, I thought. This is where the blood hits the snow. But the wolf didn't move, not an inch. It just stood there, calm as stone, eyes steady on us, on me, maybe, as if that shout was nothing more than a leaf falling. I felt my breath hitch, sharp and shallow. And then slowly, so slowly, I almost missed it. The wolf bent its legs and lowered its body to the ground, not in fear, not in defeat. It sat, like a sentry at its post. The man who had shouted stopped dead, his arms sagging like broken branches. Around us, the whispers swelled again, soft, awed, terrified. No one moved, no one dared, because deep down, every single one of us felt it, the truth hanging heavy in that frozen air. The wolf wasn't guarding itself, it was guarding him. The coffin creaked as the ropes tightened, lowering him into the ground. The sound carved through the stillness like a knife through ice. People shifted their weight, boots grinding against gravel, breaths fogging in the cold morning air. But the wolf didn't move. It stayed where it was, 20 feet away, body carved in gray stone, golden eyes burning in the muted light. No growl, no snarl, not even a twitch of its ears, just silence. So heavy it made the priest's words sound thin, fragile, like paper tearing in a storm. The prayers rolled over us, low and trembling, but I barely heard them. My eyes were locked on the beast beyond the fence, and for a moment, I swear I forgot why we were even there. He lay in that wooden box, a man who once walked these same woods, who once laughed and cursed and carried life in his hands, and now he was going back to the earth, and the only creature that seemed to truly understand what that meant was not human. Someone near me whispered, voice cracking, "It's still watching." Of course it was. Head high at first, gaze steady. Then, as the ropes hissed and the coffin touched the bottom of the grave, its head sank lower, not jerky, not nervous, slow, deliberate, like a bow. My throat tightened. A sting pricked behind my eyes. No one dared speak now. The silence wrapped around us all, binding us tighter than any prayer could. Then I saw it. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a shimmer on the wolf's fur, a glint from the pale sun. But no, it caught again and again, sliding down the coarse gray hair just beneath its eye. My breath stalled in my chest. A tear. God help me. The wolf was crying. The woman next to me gasped so sharply it sounded like a sob. Is it crying?" she whispered, her words barely air. Heads turned, necks craned, everyone straining to see, to believe. And I had to know. Before my fear could stop me, my boots were crunching over the frost-hardened earth. One step, then another. The cold bit through my coat, but I didn't feel it. My pulse thudded so loud it drowned out everything. The whispers, the wind, the priest's last words. Closer, 10 feet now. The wolf didn't move, didn't flick an ear, didn't break the stare it held on that open grave. And then I saw it, clear as breath on glass. Moisture clung to its fur in a trail so clean, so sharp it could only be one thing. Not dew, not melting frost. Tears, real tears cutting paths through the dirt and dust on its face. My knees went weak. I gripped the wooden fence post to keep from folding right there. A wild animal, a predator, weeping for a man. I didn't dare speak, didn't dare breathe too loud, because deep down, I felt it. This wasn't something meant for words. Behind me, the last clods of earth fell heavy on the coffin. The hollow thud throbbed in the air like a slow drumbeat. People began stepping back, murmuring prayers under their breath, crossing themselves as if to shield their souls from what they'd seen. I thought that was the last strange thing we'd see. I thought the wolf would vanish into the woods the second we turned our backs. But I was wrong. When the priest closed his book and the first mourners drifted toward the path, the wolf stayed, unmoving, silent, its body as still as a carved statue, its eyes molten gold against the gray day, locked on that mound of fresh earth like it was guarding a secret no human could understand. And deep inside, where reason lives, a voice whispered what none of us wanted to say out loud. It's not leaving. The mourners had thinned now, drifting back toward the muddy road in clusters of 2 and 3, whispering like people do when they've seen something they can't explain. But I stayed. I couldn't leave, because the wolf was still there. It hadn't flinched when the last shovelful of dirt thudded on the grave. It hadn't blinked when the prayers ended. It just sat, silent and unyielding, a gray shadow carved into the edge of the world. And then it rose, slow, like a tide swelling against a still shore. The movement froze the air in my lungs. Every muscle in my body coiled tight, ready to snap, run, scream, do something. But my legs betrayed me, rooting me in the damp earth as the wolf stepped forward. One paw, then another. The space between us shrank with each step, the soft pad of its feet barely whispering against the frost-bitten ground. Its fur glistened faintly where tears had traced their path, and somehow that broke me more than its teeth ever could. Nobody dared speak. The few who hadn't left yet stood stiff as gravestones, eyes wide, breath held, as if one sound might shatter the strange thread binding us all. The wolf reached the low wooden fence and didn't stop. It slipped through the gap like smoke, silent, unstoppable. And then, my heart stuttered. Something dangled from its jaws. A strip of brown leather, cracked and torn, edges darkened by time and teeth. At first, I thought it was nothing, a scrap scavenged from some old camp. But then the shape hit me like a hammer. A glove. Not just any glove. I'd seen it before, months ago, clutched in the hand of the man we'd just buried. Thick, weather-worn, made for a hunter's grip. The wolf padded forward, closing the last few feet to the fresh mound of earth. No growl, no rush, just a slow, deliberate walk that made the world tilt on its axis. When it reached the grave, it stopped, lowered its head. The sound of its breath was loud in the silence. Soft, steady puffs of steam curling into the cold air. And then, gently, like laying down something sacred, it opened its jaws. The glove slipped free, landing on the raw soil with a dull thud. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. No one even blinked. The truth hit me so hard I felt my knees weaken. It remembered. The old stories weren't just stories. Wolves never forget kindness. The glove lay there, chewed and worn, the leather scarred by teeth that could have killed but didn't. And now, those same jaws had carried it here, carried it like an offering, like a memory that refused to die. A gasp broke from someone behind me, sharp as a snapped twig. Another voice, trembling, whispered, "Dear God." But the wolf didn't look at us, didn't care about the stares, the fear, the prayers. Its golden eyes stayed on the grave, burning with something I can't put into words, something deeper than instinct, older than time. And for one insane second, I thought that was it. I thought the wolf would snatch the glove back and vanish into the trees, leaving us with nothing but questions and a story too wild to believe. But no, it didn't take it. It left it there, the glove resting on that mound like a crown, like a seal on something none of us could name. Then the wolf stepped back, slow, careful, as if afraid to disturb what it had just done. Its eyes lingered for a moment, not on me, not on the others, on him, the man beneath the soil. And then it turned, not to flee, not to hunt, just to go, each step deliberate, unhurried, as though the forest could wait, because this was the only thing that mattered. I wanted to speak, wanted to tell the world what I had just seen, but my throat locked, and all I could do was watch through the blur of tears that burned hot against the winter air, because I knew what I'd witnessed wasn't hunger, wasn't instinct. It was farewell. It came to say goodbye. The light was dying. The gray sky had deepened into bruised purple, and the last mourners lingered like shadows among the trees. No one spoke. No one could. We just stood there, stiff with something heavier than fear, staring at the fresh mound of earth and at the wolf that would not leave it. Its shape was a silhouette now, carved in black against the dim glow of the horizon, still as a statue, watching, waiting. I don't know why I didn't move. Maybe because leaving felt wrong, like walking away from a secret too big for the world. Or maybe because something deep in my bones whispered that it wasn't over yet. The air turned sharp, biting my lungs with every breath. My fingers ached with cold, but my palms were slick with sweat. I couldn't stop looking at that gray shadow crouched near the grave, its head low, tail still. And then it happened. The wolf raised its head, slowly, like a weight was dragging it upward. The movement sent a ripple through the stillness, the kind that prickles the skin before a storm. Its ears tilted back, its chest swelled, and then came the sound. A howl, long and raw, ripped into the night like something tearing loose from the earth itself. I swear the ground vibrated under my boots. The air seemed to split open, and that sound, it wasn't menace, it wasn't rage, it was grief. Pure, broken grief that poured through every crack in the human heart. It started low, trembling, then rose higher and higher until it wrapped the entire valley in a note so full of pain it felt alive, like a soul screaming, like a prayer no God could ignore. I've heard wolves before, out in the deep woods. Short, sharp calls, cold and wild. This wasn't that. This was a dirge, a funeral song. And God help me, it broke me. The priest dropped his head. One of the old men lifted a trembling hand to his face, and when it came away, it glistened. Tears. Even the wind seemed to choke. That howl carved through my chest, hollowing me out until there was nothing left but the sound and the fire of my own heartbeat. My hands shook so bad I had to lock them together to keep from falling apart. Goosebumps burned across my skin like frostbite. I'd thought I knew what mourning sounded like. I'd heard widows wail and mothers break in hospital halls. But this was older, deeper, a grief that belonged to the earth itself. The wolf held that note until my lungs ached just from listening, and then, slowly, raggedly, it let the sound die into the dark. Silence crashed down so hard it rang in my ears. No one moved. No one dared to breathe too loud. We were all caught in that moment like insects in amber, frozen in the weight of something too big for words. And in my head, a single thought burned like fire. This can't be real. For a second, I believed that was the last thing, the last strange, impossible thing nature had to give. But I was wrong, because the wolf didn't leave. It didn't vanish into the trees like a ghost satisfied with its haunting. It didn't even glance at us. It just lowered its head again, silent now, its breath misting faint in the cold, and settled back onto the earth as if it belonged there. And as the last light bled from the sky, something in the shadows shifted, shapes, faint, flickering, slipping through the trees, so quiet they made no sound at all. I squinted, my heart thudding like a drum in my throat. For a breathless second, I thought my mind was cracking under the weight of everything I'd seen. But no, they were real, and they were coming closer. At first I thought the night was playing tricks on me. Shadows slid between the trees, thin and liquid, like smoke curling through the black. My stomach turned to stone. My breath caught halfway up my throat and stuck there. Eyes. God help me, there were eyes in the dark. Not one pair, not two, dozens. Tiny coals burning low against the underbrush, catching the weak glint of the moon as it climbed over the ridge. The hair on my neck rose so fast it hurt. My fingers went numb. I wanted to shout, to warn the few souls still lingering near the grave, but the words curdled in my mouth before they could form, because I knew what was coming. The forest was empty no more. The pack was here. They moved like water, smooth, soundless, slipping through shadow until the ground seemed to breathe beneath their paws. Shapes grew from the dark, fur rippling silver, shoulders rolling like waves, tails low and steady. Wolves, not one, not three, a dozen at least, maybe more, their bodies melting out of the black like ghosts called by some ancient prayer. And for one blinding, gut-punching second, I thought this was it, the end. They smell the grave, they smell blood. We're done. My pulse jackhammered in my ears, drowning out everything but the hiss of my own breath. My knees wobbled. I tasted iron on my tongue where I'd bitten it without knowing. The first wolf, the one that had never left, lifted its head, not high, not proud, just enough to meet the others in a silence that was heavier than any sound. Then it stepped back, and the newcomers came forward. I braced for chaos, for snarls, teeth, death flashing white in the dim light. I pictured the ground painted red before the prayers had even cooled in the air. But none of that happened. One by one, the wolves closed in, and then they stopped. Not at us, at the grave. They fanned out in a slow arc, then another, until they formed a ring around the mound of fresh earth. Not tight, not tense, loose and perfect, like something practiced long before we were born. And then, as if a single breath moved them all, their heads lowered, every last one of them. No growl, no lunge, no hunger burning in their eyes. Just silence, thick and sacred, wrapping the night like a shroud. I stood frozen, my heart beating in my throat so loud I swore it echoed through the trees. My mind clawed for sense, for logic, for anything human enough to explain this, and came up empty. Because what I was seeing wasn't a hunt. It wasn't dominance. It was a funeral. The kind that made every prayer we'd mumbled hours earlier sound like noise. The wolves bowed their heads, bodies still, tails trailing in the frost, like monks kneeling in prayer. Their breath curled in the cold, little ghosts rising toward a sky gone black with stars. And I couldn't stop shaking. Not from fear now, from something else, something bigger, heavier, older than any word I've ever known. For a long time, none of them moved. The air burned with quiet so deep it rang in my ears. Then, from the far side of the circle, one wolf broke the spell. It was massive, broader in the chest, fur dark as shadow poured over stone. The alpha. It stepped forward with a grace that made the earth seem soft beneath its paws. Each stride was slow, silent, deliberate, like time itself was bowing to its weight. When it reached the mound, it stopped, lowered its head, and then, so gently I thought I dreamed it, the alpha touched its nose to the fresh soil. A shiver ran down my spine like lightning. My eyes burned hot, blurring the shape of that great gray beast bowing to a man beneath the earth. It held there a moment, a single heartbeat stretched into forever, then stepped back into the ring without a sound. I thought they'd attack after that, tear the place apart, but no, they stayed, silent, still, watching, like sentinels carved in fur and bone, guarding something sacred no human could claim. And in that frozen night, with a cold moon painting silver across their backs, a truth slammed through me so hard I almost fell. This isn't instinct. This is ritual. And if I'd thought the grave would be empty by morning, I was about to learn how wrong I was. They didn't move, not for a minute, not for 10, long enough for the night to swallow every sound except the faint hiss of our own breathing. The wolves stood like sentinels carved from shadow and moonlight, their heads bowed, their bodies forming a perfect ring around that grave. My legs ached from standing. My lungs felt too tight, like the cold was searing them from the inside. But I couldn't leave. None of us could. We were prisoners of that moment, bound by something older and heavier than fear. And then, as if a silent command rippled through the dark, the wolves stirred. One by one, they lifted their heads, not jerky, not rushed, slow, reverent, the kind of movement you make when you know you're leaving something sacred behind. The alpha turned first, padding toward the tree line without a sound. Then the others followed, not scattered, not chaotic, but together, like smoke streaming into the black belly of the forest. Not a single growl, not a single backward glance, just gone, melting into the night as if the earth itself had opened and swallowed them whole. The last one to leave was the gray wolf, the first one, the one that brought the glove. It paused, only for a breath, its golden eyes catching the moon like molten coins. And for a heartbeat, I swear it looked at me. Not through me, at me, and then it was gone. The silence that fell after was worse than any sound. Heavy, crushing, like the weight of a cathedral pressing on your chest. I turned slowly, and that's when I saw the faces around me, wet with tears, raw with awe. Hard men, old women, the priest himself, every one of them undone. No one spoke. What words could live in the shadow of that? I don't remember walking back down that road. I don't remember the mud or the frost biting my boots. All I remember is the ache in my throat, the burn behind my eyes, and the single thought looping like a hymn in my skull. It was as if they came to honor a friend. I thought I'd forget it in time, thought it would blur like a dream, like all the wild stories do when the days stretch long enough. But I never did. And the next morning, I learned why. The sun hadn't fully risen when I found myself back on that dirt road. I don't know what dragged me there. Habit, guilt, hunger for something I couldn't name. Maybe just the need to see the grave in daylight, to prove to myself that last night had really happened, that it wasn't some fever dream born of grief and cold. The cemetery was empty when I arrived. Frost glazed the earth in a brittle sheen, crunching under my boots as I climbed the hill. My breath smoked in the pale dawn, curling like ghosts in the silence. And then I saw it, the glove, still there, still resting on the mound like a crown. But that wasn't what stopped me cold. It was the flowers, fresh, wild, scattered across the grave in a way no human hand would lay them, roots tangled, stems broken like they'd been carried in jaws, not fists, and circling the mound, pressed deep into the damp earth, were prints, not one set, not two, dozens, wolf tracks, big ones, small ones, so many they overlapped into a dark halo that hugged the grave like a wreath. My throat closed, my knees nearly buckled. They came back. After we left, after the world turned its back, they returned. For what? To keep watch? To lay tribute? To grieve the way we do? I don't know. Maybe I never will. All I know is that I dropped to my knees in that frost-stiff grass, my breath breaking in jagged sobs that tore from somewhere too deep to name. Because in that moment, the truth hit like a thunderclap. It wasn't a wolf. It was gratitude. Gratitude older and purer than anything I've ever seen in the eyes of my own kind. I sat there until my fingers went numb, until the sun spilled pale gold across the stones and burned the frost to tears. And when I rose at last, I whispered words no one heard but the ghosts and the trees. I saw it with my own eyes, what most people will never believe. And if you think animals can't love, you're wrong. If you think they don't remember, you're blind. Nature remembers, longer than we do. Sometimes words cut deeper than fists, and sometimes silence heals more than 1,000 apologies. That wolf, that gray shadow of the wild, said more without a sound than any human tongue ever could, and I will carry that silence to my grave. If your heart is full of awe right now, write, nature never forgets. If you believe animals have souls, write, we are not alone in this world.